All right, praise the Lord, everybody. Just wanted to jump on here real quick and just give a quick explanation about time and what actually time is. It's really interesting when you get into time and you start to study it out. But it's funny because all these evolutionists get really angry at me because I have a good explanation of time. And, they believe that, the earth is millions upon millions of years old. And they're like, how do you explain that? When, in the Bible, you only have about 5 or 6 thousand years of humanity. And, how do you explain, that this has been carbon dated for millions upon millions of years old? And that's very simple. And they don't like that I have an answer. So the answer is quite simple. When Adam and Eve were in the garden, if you read the Bible and you speak to any pastor and you ask your pastor if you don't believe me, any good pastor will tell you that when Adam and Eve were first in the garden originally, there was no time at all. So time did not exist. So in actuality, we really don't know how long Adam and Eve were in the garden. So it is quite possible that they were in the garden for millions upon millions upon millions of years, which would explain, the carbon dating. Like science always proves God. It's awesome, but it really does. So, you do carbon dating, and I think that carbon dating is absolutely correct. I don't argue with carbon dating at all. People do carbon dating. They're like, oh, this thing's millions upon millions of years old and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, it probably is. Because when Adam and Eve were in the garden, like I said, there was no time. And the Bible doesn't specify how long Adam and Eve were in the garden. So we just don't know. So they could have been there, like I said. Adam and Eve literally had no end. They were immortal, which means immortal means you have a beginning, but you have no end, and you live on and on and on. So they if they did not sin, and you ask any pastor this, if Adam and Eve did not sin, and we would still all be in the garden today, and Adam and Eve would still be in the garden to this very day if they did not sin, because there was no death. Okay, so because of that, Adam and Eve, like I said, may have been in the garden for millions upon millions of years, and then all along came the serpent, to tempt or to deceive Eve. And then later on, Eve gave Adam the fruit. So, but to go back to time, time did not exist or start. Okay. Now, the kind of time that we're talking about here is not Chronos. Chronos is like your watch. I don't have a watch, but if I had one, it's just, the minutes and seconds. Oftentimes you'll see the word chronos, which is the Greek word for time, in, time clocks and stuff like that. That's why you see, like at work, you'll see the chronos clock, and that's what that literally means. So what kind of time we're talking about here is kairos or kiros, however you want to pronounce it. Tomato, potato. So it is the Greek word for time. And what that means, it's a span of time from one point to the next point, which is usually our beginning or our end. So the time of my birth to the time of my death, that would be the kairos time, or the kairos time, however you want to pronounce it. So that is the time that we're talking about, because time was not instituted, like I said, until Adam and Eve, or Adam partook of the fruit, because when Eve partook of the fruit, nothing really happened. Well, that's an interesting point. So nothing really happened until Adam partook of the fruit. Why is that? Because Adam was the key. Why? Because the seed was in Adam. That's why. So anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent here. But to go back to time, that time did not exist until Adam and Eve partook of the fruit. And then that's when time actually started. That's when kairos or kiros actually started for both Adam and Eve, actually for all humanity. And that's when time actually started. So, which begs the question, what is time? And I'm going to give you the answer. So now we have to understand that the laws of the natural and the laws of the spiritual are very much the same. And I'll explain that, in other videos as well. If you've watched any of my videos and you have a good understanding that the laws of the natural and the spiritual are often the same. Okay. And in this case, they are the same. Okay. So now God told Adam and Eve, you have to listen or you have to read in the context what God tells Adam and Eve. He says, the day that you eat of the fruit, you shall surely what? Die, right? So what is God? He's a big parent. We are his children, right? And a lot of times we are like kids. And, you have kids, and you tell your kid, oh, if you do this and you do that, this is going to happen, right? What? Consequences, right? Exactly. So and that's what God was just doing, to Adam and Eve. He said, if you do this and if you do that, this is going to happen, right? Consequences. That's what it is. So begs the question, what is time? So time in reality, what it is, it's punishment. It really is. So now let's go to the laws of the natural and the spiritual, okay? So if you, here on earth, if I do anything wrong, if I commit a crime or anything like that, what happens? I go see a judge, right? And then the judge is going to what? Sentence me to do some time, right? Give me 20 years, 10 years, 30 years, whatever it is for whatever crime that I did. The judge is going to give me time or a sentencing for what I did wrong, okay? Not any different with God, okay? What happened? Adam and Eve sinned. They did something wrong, right? They went against God. They disobeyed. And what is God? He is the ultimate judge. So he judged them accordingly and said, look, if you do this, this is going to happen. You will surely die. And sure enough, in the day, Adam was like 978 years or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But he died, a few years or short of God's day. So in that day, he did die. Now, remember that 1,000 years is of our years is as one day unto God. So he died in that day, in God's day. So God was true to his word. And so we have to understand that, when it comes to time, that God was serious. This was a consequence. Okay. This was a punishment. He said, okay, I'm going to basically give you time. So you're going to have this span of life now. I'm going to give you kairos or kairos, which is a span of time. You're going to have this point and then this point, and then you're going to be no more. Okay. So that's in essence what time is in that understanding of kairos or kairos, because there's a bunch of other times as well. I'm not going to go into it, but there's a different word in the Greek, for the seasons and, time changes and things of that nature and everything like that. But I pray and hope that, this video did some good for you, and you have a much, much better understanding of, number one, God and his character, number two, time, and what time actually is. So if you have any questions or comments, as always, go ahead, feel free and leave them, and we'll do another video later. God bless.